Hi, I'm Tammy from Toledo. I'm a psychic medium, and I am going to take you on a journey of how I became the medium that I am today. This first episode, I'm kind of titling Eavesdropping. When I was little, I used to talk to an imaginary friend. Um, his name was Bob, and he lived in a portrait that my stepdad and mom had in their home. And Bob used to come and join me in the doghouse that used to be adjacent to the house that we lived in. I would often go in there and play with my Barbies, and I always had to make sure I brought a male so that he could be the male's voice, and he would come and play with me. My parents thought I had an imaginary friend, and to me, he was my friend, so I didn't like that they called him imaginary, but I couldn't prove that he was there either. Um, I remember talking to him as early as being a 4-year-old. And I talked to him until I was really close to around 7 or 8 years old. And I ended up losing the ability to talk to him because I was in the doghouse one day playing with him when the neighbors got into a huge fight. And I was accused of eavesdropping on their private conversations because they were fighting in their kitchen with the window open. Our houses were really, really close together. Okay. So it was like our house, the dog house, a fence, house, their kitchen window. Very close. So, but anyways, they saw me sneaking out of the doghouse to go into the house because they were making me uncomfortable with their arguing. So, since they accused me of eavesdropping on their conversation, and my dad, in response to that, moved the doghouse into the back of the yard, really, basically the furthest he could get it away from the house, which was closer to like an alley. There was where no people were around. I tried going in there and playing and trying to talk to and play with Bob, but he wasn't there. I was too young to understand that he was connected to that portrait, so he therefore connected to the house, and he couldn't come out that far, to keep me company. And that's basically what he did. The next incident doesn't have anything to do with eavesdropping, though. This one is a little more convoluted. These are just the incidences that I remember that are more of a within the psychic realm, really. 3rd grade, I had long blonde hair and ringlets, just long curls, and I loved my hair. And I was bullied very bad. This one girl especially was constantly just picking and picking and picking. And Mrs. S, the teacher, I was the teacher's pet too. So, anyways, she went up to go and sharpen a pencil, and as she walked past me, she put a big wad of gum in my hair. And I tried to get it out, and I just made it a huge mess. And I could have told on her, but I didn't, because I knew that she was going to get into more trouble than what I would. So I just tried to hide it and tried to keep it clean, tried to clean it out, and of course it got so bad. The teacher had called home and told my parents that I was chewing gum in the classroom and got it stuck in my hair, which we weren't allowed to chew gum back then. And gum wasn't like it is today. It was very sticky and gooey, and it was bubblicious purple. So, bubblicious gum. Goodness, I haven't had that in a long time. Anyway, I wanted to tell my parents the truth when I got home, and I did tell them my truth when I got home. But see, the teacher had already called and told that version. Well, that version didn't get that girl in trouble, And so I got into trouble for lying. And so that was one of the things that stood out. The next thing in early childhood that stood out was 5th grade. My teacher, Mr. H, was teaching with the teacher across the hall, and she was in charge of the hearing impaired classroom. So the kids were all the same age as us and everything, and they would often combine the two classrooms, using it like an integration for the hearing impaired to come into the class with us. And I loved it. I had a really great friend in the hearing impaired class, and so I loved it when she came over. One day, I stayed after when everybody else went to lunch, like using a pretense or something of needing to finish my work. I did everything and anything I could to avoid the lunchroom. Still being bullied. I was bullied all the way through 8th grade. Anyway, they didn't use the term bullying then, by the way. It was always being picked on or being teased or, stuff along those lines. It wasn't, bullying wasn't really a known thing like it is today. So anyway, Mr. Hardy was in the class, or Mr. H was in the classroom, and I went up to him and I asked him if he was going to be marrying the hearing impaired teacher. And I'm about 10 years old, 5th grade. I think it's around 10 years old. And he wanted to know why I asked that question. And I just said, well, she's having your baby, so I thought you were going to get married. Because, in the 70s, you didn't get somebody pregnant unless you were married. So I was just asking because she was already pregnant. Needless to say, I got my very first Board of Education spanking for eavesdropping on conversations that I had no business listening to. The only thing is that I wasn't there during their conversation, and the teacher didn't believe me that I didn't eavesdrop, because how else would I have known that she was going to have a baby? I always knew when somebody was going to have a baby. I still do to this day. Although I've gotten better about not telling people. My daughter-in-law fixed me at that. But anyways, I got my first spanking and got it reported at home again and got into trouble for eavesdropping. The life of a psychic medium as a child. But then you gotta kind of remember, in the 1970s and even early 80s, actually most of 1970s and 80s, being a psychic of any kind was not a thing. It was a taboo thing. You could end up in an asylum or a psych ward. So you didn't talk about it. You didn't share or overshare. You didn't be different. It was very discouraged. And that's the way kind of life was for me in my first 10 years of life. So, but anyways, a lot of this, I am looking back in hindsight. I am seeing what was pivotal things that happened in my life. That I made decisions based on these experiences that pretty much made me the way that I am today. And so I'm kind of sharing a lot of these things with you so that other people who are dealing with either children who are showing abilities or differences, it's going to be happening a lot in the near future. So my goal is to have something to help. So hopefully you'll take my stories as they are intended, and I just want to help, because sometimes imaginary friends are not very imaginary, and things really do go bump in the night. So I hope you enjoyed the first episode of A Medium and Me, A Journey.